All right, so in this part of the challenge, we are going to go ahead and discuss the general function 1 over x minus h. So we did when h was 7, and we did it when h was 5. And in your notebook, go ahead and in the next page of your notebook, we're going to call this general function notes. Okay, so pause the video here while you set up your notebook on the next blank page. Call it your general function notes, and then when you're finished, keep the video going. Okay, so we looked at two examples of this function that I'm going to go ahead and type up. F of x equals 1 over x minus h. We did the first example was when h was 7. Right? And the second example was when h was 5. So hopefully you noticed something, and I'm going to go ahead and graph on Desmos.com these two functions, x minus 7. So this is what the graph looks like. We just looked at this part of the graph, but I'm going to go ahead and put that on my, sorry. So that's kind of what the graph looks like. And then sorry, let me insert the graph. Okay. And then we also graphed 1 over x minus 5. So, sorry about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and decrease this in size. Okay, so we also can make the graph of 1 over x minus 5, which on Desmos.com looks really similar to the graph of x minus 7, except if you notice it's just shifted over to the left, right? So this one looks a lot like this graph, except it's moved over to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of that and put it here on my notebook. But hopefully you have this graph in your notebook that you did by hand. If you did not have this graph, make sure you fix your graphs, and you can ask me in workshop to make sure you know how to do this, okay? So we now have our two graphs, and you notice they look really similar, right? They kind of have this form where they're broken up into two pieces. This one right here coming from the left side, and then this one right here coming from the right side as we get closer to x equals 7. And then in this one, we have a graph, this way coming from the left side and this way coming from the right side as we approach x equals 5. So there's something weird that happens at x equals 5 right here. And there's something weird that happens at x equals 7 right here. So if you realize, we're going to go ahead and write some notes about that. So for the first example, so we have f of x equals 1 over x minus 7. When x was equal to 7, this is what happened. We had f of 7 equals 1 over 7 minus 7, which is equal to 1 over 0. Okay, so this is a problem because you cannot divide by 0. Okay, it's impossible to divide by 0, a number by 0. This is an undefined number. This is undefined. So I'll let you write these notes down first, and then when you're finished, you can go ahead and keep going, and then we'll talk about why dividing by 0 is undefined. So pause, make sure you have this written down, and then keep the video going. Okay, so the reason why anything divided by 0 does not work is if we look at it this way, so why is dividing by 0 not possible? Okay. Well, we have a number, let's say we did 6 divided by 3. 6 divided by 3 is equal to 2, right? So 6 divided by 3 is equal to 2. We are saying, okay, we want the number that when multiplied by 3 gives us 6, right? That's what it's saying. 6 divided by 3 is asking the question, what number, when I multiply it with 3, will result in 6? That number is 2, right? Number 2 times 3 will equal to 6. So 2 times 3 equals 6. Now, we're asking when we're taking a number, let's say 6, and dividing it by 0, we're asking the question, what number, when multiplied with 0, gives the number 6? And the answer is no number multiplied with 0 can result in the number 6, because anything times 0 is 0, right? So this therefore results in an undefined number when I try to divide 0. If you don't fully understand this, that's okay. It's a little tricky to understand, especially if you're not very strong in your division and multiplication. But I wanted to go over why once we start approaching the number on the denominator here, once we start approaching h, we have this weird gap, right? Because it's undefined. When we graph this graph, there's nothing at 5 because it's resulting in an undefined number. Okay, same thing here when we try to graph at x equals 7, there's this gap right here. There's no actual number there. It's undefined. So I would like for you to pause the video here. Make sure you have the notes on why we can't divide by 0. And then we will do some more notes on this type of function. So pause the video, and then when you're finished, keep on going. Okay, so in general, right, for the function f of x equals 1 over x minus h, okay, we notice something really interesting. We notice that as we get closer to h, so as x approaches h, as x approaches h, f of x, okay, either gets really, really, really small, so you notice it goes down all the way down to the big negative numbers, or it gets really, really, really big, goes all the way up to positive infinity. So from the left side, as x approaches h from the left side, f of x gets really small and approaches negative infinity. So we're going to do the symbol for infinity here. Okay, oops, sorry. As x approaches h from the right side, so as we get closer to the value of h, let's say h equals 5, our f of x becomes really, really big. It approaches positive infinity. So as x approaches h from the right side, f of x gets really big and approaches positive infinity. So I'll let you write these notes down real quick before we move on. So pause the video here. Go ahead and write the notes. Okay, so we observe that For a general function, whatever h is, whether it's 7, whether it's 5, it could be 10, 12, and we can try this. We can try all sorts of different types of h's. So we could do 1 over x minus 3. We could do 1 over x minus 10. We could do 1 over x minus 12. When whatever h is, we have this general shape for the function. We have this, when we are approaching x from the left side, we start becoming really, really, really small. And when we approach h from the right side, we become really, really big. And there's this gap in the middle, okay, where h is, because it is an undefined number. This is what's called an asymptote, okay? So let me do a general graph for you. We're going to let h be equal to 0. So it's just 1 over x, okay? So this general shape, you can go ahead and graph it in your notebooks, okay? So I'll let you take a moment to, draw this. It doesn't have to be very big. I just want you to draw the shape of the graph. Right? And notice, like I said, as x approaches h from the left side, it gets really small. As x approaches h from the right side, it gets really big. Okay, so go ahead, copy the shape of this graph down, and then when you're finished, you can come back to the video. Okay, so this kind of graph has something called a vertical asymptote. So on the next page of our, in the next step, I'll talk a little bit more about what asymptotes are. But as you can see in general, okay, no matter what h is, when we approach h from the left side, we get really, really small. When we approach h from the right side, we get really, really big. And we'll talk more about why that's happening later. But I want you to start making these observations, start realizing these patterns about this particular general function, okay? So now that you've written some notes on this function and the general shape of the graph, take a photo of your notes and upload it on Dreamseedo.